Hi everyone, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Hey you guys, how are you? Hello.
Hello.
Hi Sylvia.
Hello.
Thank you guys for coming. I apologize for the delay. Somebody was using our Zoom account, so it took me a minute to get the account back from them. So
no problem, you're fine. Thanks for inviting us.
yeah, thanks for coming. Do you guys have any questions before I start to let people in? Okay, it's just going to be pretty informal. So we're just going to be going around talking about our Fulbright experiences, answering questions that students may have. So in the beginning, I'll just have you introduce yourself, what country you're from, what country you're in or you've been to for Fulbright, maybe talk a little bit about your personal experience, and then we might ask some questions about your Fulbright application process and just kind of the Fulbright experience in general and how it went for you. This was our first year at CGU at Claremont Graduate University putting this all on. So bear with us if we have anything that happens, just let me know if you have any questions, and I can let you back into Zoom if you get kicked out or anything like that, okay?
Good. So our audience is predominantly US students wanting to go abroad, or we might have also internationals.
They should all be US students from CGU that just have questions about their Fulbright application. So they might just ask you questions about your experience and kind of the application process. Sound good? Okay, I'm gonna let a few students in and they might trickle in, so we'll just give them a few minutes to get in. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's so good to see you.
You too, thanks for coming, I appreciate it. And thank you for bringing in, how do you pronounce your name? Everton? Are you in Brazil?
Everton, it sounds V. Yes, Everton.
Okay, nice to meet you. Muito prazer.
Prazer.
Okay. We're gonna wait a couple minutes just until everyone gets here. Hi, Anne.
Hey. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Jeremy. Just gonna wait a couple more minutes. We should have a few more students coming, so just give me a few more minutes to let people in. Courtney, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, sounds good. Before we get started, does anyone have questions for me? No, okay. It's just gonna be pretty informal. We can start, and then if people come in, we'll let them in. Why don't we go around and just introduce ourselves? I'm Rebecca Donaldson. I'm the Fulbright assistant this year at CGU. I did my Fulbright, I did an English teaching assistantship in Brazil in 2014. I'm now a PhD student in positive developmental psychology. And I know all of you in some way or another. So we're gonna try to put this event on, and we'll just go around and introduce ourselves. And if you're a previous Fulbright scholar or you're a current one, tell us the country that you're studying in or studied in and the country you're from. Who wants to go first? Christelle?
Sure, I'll go ahead. So my name is Christelle Vericat. I'm currently on my Fulbright scholarship, actually. So I'm originally from Lebanon, and my Fulbright is to the United States. I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I'm pursuing a Master's of Arts in Peace and Conflict Studies with a concentration on international peace development. And obviously, I know Rebecca through the Summer Peace Building Program at Middlebury. And it's great to just be here with you, and I'm not sure how helpful I'll be since the majority of the crowd is comprised of US students, but maybe I could give some tips and advice. And the next person on my screen is Sylvia.
Hi, everyone. So I'm a current Fulbrighter. I'm from Spain, and I'm doing my Fulbright in CGU, Claremont Graduate University. That's why I know Rebecca. And I'm doing a master's in positive health psychology. So I just finished my first year, and I have still like another year to go. And I'm super excited to be here. I'll try to help as best as I can, but like with all my humility, you know. So thank you so much and nice to meet you all. I don't know who's the next person, so
I'll go.
maybe.
Hi,
Yeah.
everyone. My name is Louise Goodman. I'm originally from the US. I did a Fulbright English teaching grant originally in 2013. And then I continued on with something called the Fulbright Mentorship Program in 2014 in the same city. And I had a wonderful experience that I'm sure we'll get to talk about, but it's actually how I made a lot of really good contacts in the field I work with now, and I still work with Professor Everton, who's here today. So it's a great program that I can't say enough wonderful things about.
Thank you. And finally, I'm going to mispronounce your name again. Overton, would you like to go?
Everton. When I was in the US, my friends used to call me Eric because it was easier. My name is Everton. I'm from Brazil. I was a Fulbrighter in the Scholar in Residence program. I went to Maryland and I taught Portuguese in a community college, Howard Community College, during 2013-14. Currently, I teach in a federal university in Brazil in the English department, and this year I finished my PhD in translation studies. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming. Thank you to all of you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. We are recording this. Are you guys okay with recording that? Okay, because we're going to share this on our page, and so many students will be accessing it after this. Great. Let's get started. I'm going to start with a few questions that you guys can go around and answer, and then we can open it up to students to kind of talk about questions that they may have or anything else they'd like to say. Can you guys go around and tell me a little bit about your Fulbright application process and what that looked like, how many months you spent on your application, who you worked with, what the writing process was like, anything you want to mention about your Fulbright application process? Anyone can go.
Okay, I can get us started. So I applied, first of all, I need to mention that my Fulbright was a Fulbright foreign student program, because I believe like there are different types of Fulbright. In Lebanon, we have either student for master's or scholar, which is for more established people in their careers. I know that on the US side, you have so many more variations. So they opened up scholarship in February of 2019, and we had till May to complete it. And I was just going into the application and outside of it like several times because you just started and then you can hop on and off from it. I think the application itself does not take a lot of time to complete when it comes to your essential information. It's more about, you know, picking some of your initial universities that you would later on refine and program, writing, you know, the personal statement, and also ensuring that all of your recommenders submit their recommendations on time. So I would guess that one of the biggest pieces of advice that I would give to anybody who's applying is to let your recommenders know ahead of time that you want to apply to Fulbright, and keep reminding them about the deadlines, because, you know, most of them are instructors or professionals and they have so many different things going on in their lives that they tend to forget sometimes. And yeah, I just submitted at the beginning of May because I was also still a student in my bachelor's and I had a lot of time commitment. So I just took my time with it and made sure to have strong essays. And I'm sure we'll be talking more about the personal statements and subsequent questions. So that's for me.
Anyone else want to go?
I'll go next. So I obviously was applying from the side of a US student, kind of figuring out what to do next. I think my biggest pieces of advice are as follows. Pick a weekend early on in whatever year that you're in. So if you're in your senior year or if you're in the last year of a graduate program, pick a weekend and sit down and go through all of those emails you get about upcoming grants and scholarships and opportunities and make one spreadsheet. That was one thing that a friend had recommended and really helped me. So that way you organize what is a Fulbright scholar, like a year of academic study and research, what is an English teaching assistantship, and then under each opportunity that you find, figure out when the deadline is, and then specific objectives of that program. I know that a lot of people in graduate school, something I went through is you're going to think about, well, should I do a research grant where I go and study and work at a university for a year, or should I do an English teaching grant where perhaps I can get some work experience and work in a university or school system in a different capacity? And I would really read through the objectives of those programs and then figure out which objectives align up with what you are interested in studying, because Fulbright offers a lot of different opportunities from, you know, a research grant, a teaching grant. There's also opportunities for educators in different capacities to go abroad for 3 or 4 months and work in like a collaborative program. So just go through all of them, get everything on paper, look at all the objectives, all the deadlines, and go from there. After I did that, I talked to a contact at my university that most universities have. It sounds like in this case it will be Rebecca, but someone to help you write your essays, figure out maybe if previous students from that university got those grants, and you can look at their essays or kind of tap into their knowledge on what their application process was like. I would say give everything about a 3-month range. So I asked my recommenders 3 months in advance. After the first month, I sent them a gracious reminder, and on month 2, they got them in. And then I also say 3 months because the best piece of advice I ever got was to write a very rough draft personal statement or statement of intent, and then get as many people that you know in different capacities to read it and give you comments. A professor came back to me and said, I don't really think you talked about this skill that you have. A friend came and said, well, I think you're a little bit warmer in person. You need to make sure that gets in there. I think if people know you in different lights, you can get all of their feedback and really help them find an essay that shapes who you are as a person. So just start that really early. Another thing I would do is, it sounds silly, but I would say stalk the internet. You can find a lot of Facebook groups about people who have gotten grants in the past, and they talk about some of their experiences in the chat or in the comments. And you would be surprised to know that lots of people, if you just friend request them, they would be happy to give you their feedback. I've gotten some friend requests from different people who said like, oh, I'm going to Brazil on this and I'd like to ask you about that. And I found you through this Facebook group. And I think that that's a really good community of people who are living this experience recently and really want you to succeed. So I wouldn't be shy about going and finding those. All I have. Sylvia, would you like to go?
Sure. So I can speak a bit about my experience, which is going to be a little bit different, because as an international student, the scholarship I applied to was to do either like a master's or a PhD. And then the process goes that you apply 2 years in advance. And then if you get this, you get the fellowship. In this case, I got it. They help you to write all the application process. They'll help you with your personal statement, with everything. But in my case, the most challenging and essential part of the application was writing an essay about the project I wanted to work on for my Fulbright, and kind of convincing like the committee about how this project is so important for my personal growth as a future researcher. And one of the essential pieces was as well how doing this scholarship abroad would help me in the future, and how when I go back to Spain, because I'm on an exchange visa and I'm supposed to go back to my country at least 2 years, we have like a requirement as international students, how this would help me for my future. So I would say that I definitely start thinking about the application. Like the deadline was like, I remember it was like April of 2020. 2019, and I started thinking about what I wanted to write probably like the summer before, September. I started talking with some professors, and I really thought about, what really makes me feel passionate about, and certainly finding that motivation to write about what you love, what you would like to do, and why, in my case, why the US would be the place to be, right? And why I would have to be there to study what I'm most passionate about, which in my case was like positive sci. So definitely think ahead. Those recommendation letters, definitely, you gotta let them know in advance. I got lucky, but yeah, definitely, like they said, send them some reminders, and just keep in mind the deadline, and keep in mind that you need to have enough time to write the essay, all the personal information, and just like think for the best. Because I remember first there was like the application, and then the second round was like the interview, right? And in my case, I remember like there's many people, maybe like 300 applications or 400 applications. And then there's like 100 people get interviewed, and then they only get 20. So there's like only 1 out of 5. And that was like really, really challenging for me, like the interview part. But I remember that in this case for the Fulbright, the people who interviewed me were like previous Fulbrighters. And it was like a very casual interview. I think it was like the the best interview I ever had, because it was like in a very casual and friendly environment. But I definitely had a chance to show them how motivated I felt and how passionate I was. And it was like a kind of like half an hour interview or 20 minutes. So I'm not sure if there's like an interview when you do like the American application, but definitely for the interviews, it's key. Just being yourself, being genuine, and kind of like summarize what you wrote in the essay, and always feel that passion you feel and what you have.
Thank you. Yeah, there is an interview. I think we all went through an interview. I'm not sure. Do you guys know if after the interview, not everyone gets recommended? I can't remember.
So I can just comment on my country, and as you will realize, like for me and Sylvia, the application process is kind of similar but a bit different, and the deadlines also vary. So just make sure to always check the deadlines for the Fulbright program you're applying to. But in my case, after the interviews, yeah, there were some people who did not make the cut. So in the case of Lebanon, they only choose 10 to 11 of us. So we were semi-finalists, and we had to do GREs and TOEFLs, even if our programs didn't need them, because at that point we hadn't, reselected the final 4 universities. But after we finished those 2 standardized examinations, we started collaborating with Ahmed East DC in my case, because Ahmed East is our sponsor for the MENA region, but for Spain and other countries, it's probably IIE. And we determined the universities, and so they opened the applications, they fill them out, you filled, your part of them, you write the essay, send them to them, and then you just wait for a couple of months to hear back from them whether you got a grant or if you didn't get the grant. So beginning to end, really, my process was also close to 2 years, or more accurately, like 1.5 years. So it takes a lot of, patience, but it's definitely really worth it. And obviously my Fulbright experience is still ongoing, but it's definitely worth it.
Do you guys want to speak a little bit about your personal statements and what you wrote about? And what that process was like? Anyone can go. I won't call on you guys because I won't make you speak, but if you'd like to speak, go ahead.
Sure, I can go. One thing I'll say about my personal statement, I think just to kind of follow up on something Christelle said, it's all worth it. I remember writing my personal statement and thinking to myself, I'm really grateful for this experience, because when life moves really fast, it can be kind of a gift to have to like take a pause and say, who am I? What are my objectives? Where do I want to be in the next 5 years? And am I able to clearly articulate that and explain the choices that I make? So I definitely think it's a great process to go through. It's also a good process because I think that when you have one piece of paper, in the case of the English teaching assistantship, it was a relatively 2 short pieces. You had 2 pieces of paper, a personal statement, and I think a statement of intent. So when you have to fit your life on those 2 pieces of paper, you really evaluate your grammar and if you use every word on the page effectively. So I would try to find as many good writers as you know to go through, and perhaps forget how you write emails and forget how you would speak about yourself and kind of get into newspaper writing. Does every sentence have a good impact, and is it a good use of space on the page? Another thing I would say about the personal statement is I think that I was a little bit repetitive in my statement of purpose and or my personal statement and my statement of intent. And a good piece of advice that came out of my university was, she said, okay, we're sending someone a package of you, and it's a very small box and we have to fit a lot into it. So we're not going to have any repeats. And she said, let's take everything you have and kind of put it aside. And then I want you to say the 10 most important things in bullet points. And when I did that, I was actually able to kind of put together a narrative from scratch and not actually use what I had originally written, but it was a really good piece of advice to say, if you can only say 10 things, what do you want them to be? And now let's figure out how we can put those into these 2 pieces of paper and make sure that we're not repetitive, and also make sure that we're not repeating anything that they would learn anyplace else on your application. Another good piece of advice she gave me was, she reminded me that there is no resume, at least when you fill out the Fulbright student application, whether you're going to be a researcher or an English teaching assistant. So you might think your whole life lives and breathes on LinkedIn, but the committee won't see that. So you have to figure out what experience is worth mentioning and how can I concisely connect that to the job or the task that I'll have at that location. Another good piece of advice is to read over the application questions. You fill in all of these little boxes that are similar to a resume, but not a resume, much like kind of the Common App for universities or what you filled out to go to grad school. I would do that first, so that way you know what information you've already given them. Again, if you're sending someone a box of your life, if you've already put it in print there, you don't want to waste space in your statement of purpose and your statement of intent repeating that information. So I think just start early and don't be repetitive.
Yeah, so for me, I really love how you mentioned like you're giving a small package or box to somebody to introduce them to who you are. So for us, we did have the option to include, or actually it was mandatory to include like a CV. Mine is always like a CV hybrid with a resume, so that was super helpful. But when it comes to the essays, personally, I did not really have any help, so I just relied on my own self. But definitely, if you are in an institution where there are, resources available, specifically people who are in charge, of prestigious scholarships or grants, use those resources because it's really great, and it's a good thing to have also people read over your pieces of writing because they have different perspectives and they kind of mimic like the perspectives of those who are reading your essays like on the selection committee. My personal advices or pieces of advice would really be to don't stick to the first draft. It will really look different by the time you submit it, but also take the time to leave it aside and then come back to it like after a couple of days, because then you come back with a different perspective and you are more perceptive of small errors or small issues that maybe you hadn't noticed in passing as you were reading. And really the best advice that I could potentially give when it comes to a personal statement is that it does not only need to represent you, but make it flow like a story. So you are telling them a story of yourself, who you are, the things maybe that you did, you know, in your high school and then into your bachelor's degree or even your master's if you're applying for a Fulbright for PhD. You're telling them your growth journey. You're telling them the challenges maybe that you've overcome. Don't make it only about academics and professional experience. Include your extracurriculars, things you are passionate about. And I know it can be tricky because there is such a small amount of words that's allowed, and I can't really recall how many at the top of my head, but it was something like 500 or 750, and you just go crazy and go like, well, how am I gonna fit all my life into these words? But the idea is that you'll have the chance during the interview to talk more about these points or to show different other aspects. Just try to really pinpoint what are your key identity elements and just have them included in there. And I think in the statement of intent, if I'm not mistaken, I also had a statement of intent from my part. It's really about showing those cultural linkages. So we act as ambassadors of our own countries abroad. So in my case, I am an ambassador of Lebanon, the US. And so part of my mission, besides, you know, learning all of this knowledge and really giving back to the community, is also introducing people here to Lebanon, my country, and maybe also reducing stereotypes related to Lebanon. And on the flip side of the coin, it's also when I go back home for those 2 years of home residency requirement, etc., I'll be also promoting my experiences and my knowledge of US culture that I gained from those years that I spent here on Fulbright. So make sure to kind of incorporate that element of cultural exchange, because Fulbright at its core is that. And maybe one last thing that I would say on all of these topics is read the prompts very carefully. So everything you need to write the perfect essay is in the prompt. There isn't a word that's there that doesn't have a purpose. So just be careful to dissect the questions. Make sure that you're answering all of the questions in your essay or your statement of intent or your research proposal. And just really focus on how this experience can help you grow as a person, can help you move forward in your career, can help you benefit your country once you're back home, can help you, you know, benefit the other host country that you will be going to. And yeah, you'll be fine. Just be genuine. Yeah.
Thank you, Chriselle. That was great. Does anyone else want to talk about their personal statement? You don't have to. I'm not going to call on you guys because I don't like it when people.
I can go.
Okay.
Can I go?
Go ahead.
I remember my whole process was online, so I didn't have to send anything like through email or something. I had a specific platform and there were questions, but I did, I had to write a teaching project because my program was for Fulbright Scholar in residence. So I had to write a teaching project about, and I remember trying to write a summary about how I see language teaching, what I understand for language teaching, how I understand language. And a piece of advice I would give for someone who wants to participate in a Fulbright program is letting clear in your text how it's going to impact not only yourself, but your community when you're back. I think it's important for Fulbright that the things you learn during your program is going to pass to other people. So I think they want you to make clear how you can benefit other people from what you learned.
Great. I like the community aspect of that. That's very true. Sylvia, do you want to say anything?
You've all gave great advice. It's difficult to think of anything else. But yeah, definitely to highlight the piece of like giving back to the community, international cultural exchange, And I would also highlight the importance of talking about overcoming challenges, as Christelle said. I think talking about a difficult time in your life and how you overcome that period, how you can be a resourceful person can definitely help. Just not talk about like all the positive, right? I feel like it can also be helpful talking about barriers and challenges you may have faced in the past. And yeah, but yeah, definitely great piece of advice that I've heard so far.
Thank you, Sylvia. Let's take a break from the application process for just a second, just because it can get a lot kind of heavy. Let's talk about, go around and just say one memory from your time abroad that you really enjoyed. So some sort of experience or a memory that you'd like to share with us that was something memorable for you.
Okay, so I remember during my year there that there was this week, it was called the Diversity Week. And with many themes, I had to present my country. And as Christelle was saying, we're like showing our country and ambassadors of our country. And I remember I thought, I thought I knew more about my country. I realized I knew so little when I was there outside from my country, and I had to present my country to other people. And I think I never researched so much about my country as I did when I was there, when I was actually out of my country. So during this week, I had 1 hour to present. And you know, Brazil is huge. I didn't want to make people bored about historical facts and numbers and geography, and it was so hard to select what information I wanted to show. So I remember that was challenging and was very nice to do also.
I agree with Everton. Don't realize how little you know about your country or how much you know about a specific aspect of your country, and then you're forced to kind of condense it all or to do more research, you know, about your own country to present it. And I also had like this departmental presentation that was like 2 hours long, and I was like, okay, I'm not sure if I put in too much information or what would people be interested most in learning about. I guess, I mean, when you're on a Fulbright, you have so many different opportunities and so many different, you know, events and experiences that it's so difficult to just limit everything to one memory. So I really, for example, enjoyed, you know, going to an aquarium. In Lebanon, we don't really have them. You know, the aquariums are, you walk through them and all that. I really enjoyed 4th of July, where I got kind of spend the typical 4th of July, you know, with my supervisor who invited me over, and like, you know, they had standard hamburgers and hot dogs and games in the yard and fireworks, and it was just a great experience for me. I had been to the US a couple of times before, including one of those times was on another Department of State program, but this was the first 4th of July I got to spend here, and even though it was, you know, during the pandemic, I'm happy that it was like a typical 4th of July and it had a sense of normalcy to it.
Anyone else?
I think a good piece of advice and memory I would have is I would always tell people, like, grow where you are planted. It's always going to be a new way of life, and I would hate for anyone to like lose a day or a week or even a month or multiple months of their experience kind of disliking their placement, whether that be like a geographical placement or what university you're in, or perhaps like the department you're placed in. I would just say, like, never waste any time with that. I was kind of grown and raised in a large city, and I went to a very remote part of Brazil. And I remember at first I was like, oh my goodness, like, I don't know if this is going to work out. And I can't say enough wonderful things. I went back for 2 years in a row, and I'm still in contact with everyone there. So just grow where you're planted. If you're in a small remote area, then go and buy a bicycle and start riding around and enjoying that. If you're in a big city, you know, get a Metro card and just try to meet and connect with as many people as possible. Just do what that space and that environment provides, because that's how you'll have the best experience.
I love that. That's a great quote to live by. I'm going to live by that this year, I think. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Sylvia, do you have anything you want to mention? I know you've been here.
Sure. I mean, it's been like a very challenging year for us all. First of all, I didn't think I could be able to make it here. You know, it happened, you know, so fast. I was like, a year ago, I was almost convinced I would have to do my master's online from Spain. And then, you know, I don't know what happened, but suddenly we could go to the embassy, you know, I could get my visa on time. It was like a miracle for me. And it's been like a really challenging year still, right? With online learning, I wasn't like, you know, I never had like an online experience learning before. But, you know, being here, I mean, I wouldn't change it for anything. Even in a pandemic year, it's giving me so much meaning being here during this pandemic. And definitely memorable moments. I had many moments, but definitely what all those moments have in common, it's like being with people around and socializing to the extent that I could, right? In the beginning it was hard, and then it got easier with the vaccine and everything. And then one of the best moments I had so far was when we went to Grand Canyon after finals. This last May, it was like, wow. It was like a dream to me. I've always wanted to go there, and then it was possible. But it was being there with people I met here in the US. And that's like, it's like, you can't put like a price in that, right? After all the effort and after all the challenges this year, definitely being there with people and, you know, communicating and exchanging, that's like the most meaningful part for me.
Great, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges that we face. So for me personally, I had a hard time finding housing, not being completely fluent in Portuguese at first, and having to navigate that was kind of difficult. What were some of the things you had to navigate in Fulbright that were a little difficult for you?
Oh God, there's a lot. I don't really know where to start. I will go say, as a disclaimer, that most of the challenges, honestly, that I personally had were because of the pandemic that then, you know, caused delays with everything. So, for example, I have a graduate assistantship, and getting a social security number was a hassle because, like, I contacted them, and the earliest appointment they could give me was like 5 weeks away. And people like normally told me that you would be able to just walk into the administration and then, you know, just wait it out and get it done in one day, and then you just like wait for them to mail you like the card. Also had, you know, to go to the ER back in December. It wasn't a COVID thing, but you know, just navigating the US healthcare system was definitely a difficulty because it's so different than, you know, healthcare back in my country. And here healthcare is mostly like privatized, which it is also in my country, to be fair, but it works really differently. And there are all of these things about in-network and out-of-network and, you know, referrals and all these things. So it was kind of really challenging. I guess mostly I had to rely, you know, on the call center of the insurance, but also the international office tried to kind of help as much as they could, you know, within what advice they could give, because sometimes their hands are tied or they cannot really, you know, advise you on something like that. But I will say that all challenges, they're difficult at the moment when they happen, but a couple of months or years afterwards, like you'll look back on them and you'll really pat yourself on the back because they really contributed to your growth. And some of them might actually turn into interesting or funny stories later on. But obviously it's not fun when the challenge is happening and you're just scrambling to kind of, you know, find a way out of it. But I will say, like, for everybody who's, you know, incoming, if it's international students coming to the US or even people going from the US to abroad, always make sure to contact your international program center or international office, because they have really great resources. They have sometimes programs in which they connect their international students or like local students to internationals that are coming in, so that like you have somebody who can talk with you, who can give you, you know, advice regarding housing, who can share their experiences with you and kind of help you through that. I mean, there's really a big support system. Sometimes official staff of the university cannot really advise you on all matters because, you know, it's just like the rules of the university, but they can help. They try to help. If they can give you resources, they will, you know, give you resources for you to find whatever you're looking for, be it housing, etc. And housing for me was also a bit problematic because like dorms wanted, you know, us to leave like the stuff and then stay outside for like 10 days and come back. And I'm somebody who never imagined I will live, you know, off campus in an apartment. But then I decided to actually go that route because I felt it would be like really complicated, you know, to just stay on campus as an international that's coming here and, you know, I have no place to go for like 10 days, etc. And that was a bit challenging, but it was also interesting, and I'm happy with my decision, you know. And again, like the international office was a big help, like by connecting me to other international students who were able to offer advice. And a lot of people tend to go on Facebook where you find those housing groups, like per college, per area, per region, etc., in which you can, you know, kind of try to scout and look into options. So there are always really solutions, and there are a lot of different resources at the university, not just through the international office or international program center. So just make sure not to be shy and to just go for it and ask them for help, because that's really part of their job, and they ultimately just want you to have the best experience that you can have.
Well, I was very lucky about housing. A person from college found this family that is originally from the same country as me. So they received me as a family member, and we still talk. Nowadays, we still talk. We talk on Facebook and everything. She was like a mom to me. I was really lucky. But one challenging thing for me was winter, you know. I live in a tropical country, and in the north of this part of my country don't have winter. So well, at first you feel excited about, oh, it's snowy, finally I'm seeing snow, it's so beautiful. And then the second week, and then after 2 months, it's still cold. So for me, winter was really a challenge. Now I laugh about it and I say, oh, snow is beautiful in the picture.
Sylvia, do you have anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I was thinking about like the simple challenge of just being on your own, like really far away from home, like it's my case. Sometimes it can feel like, you know, like it can be difficult at times. But then it's like, don't be afraid to make mistakes, I would say. Everyone can make mistakes. So, you know, I had so many troubles with, you know, the health insurance. I'm still struggling to understand how the system works here. But then it's like you make mistakes, so, you know, and then you can always work that out. You can always fix problems. Most of the problems have a solution. So definitely being with this perspective and this like mindset of like hoping for the best and that everything can be fixed, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, because we all make mistakes. And I would definitely say that it's so important like to reach out to people, like especially in the beginning. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to, you know, reach out first to meet new people. because not all people are gonna reach out to you. So from the very beginning, I feel if you can get to know some people, make friends from the very beginning, that's gonna like build this important social network and source of support that's gonna be so important in the future. And when it comes to housing, yeah, definitely, as they mentioned, check out Facebook groups, check out like the university website. They usually have a lot of resources on that. I really wanted to live on campus the first year, or campus on like on a residence, because I thought it would be like easier and I would feel more comfortable. And also it turned out that it was like a wonderful opportunity for me in a pandemic year, because I could like here's like a small community and all of them are students, and it really helped me get to know them and be in like a friendly environment. But I wouldn't be afraid, like Christelle said, going off campus can be a wonderful experience as well. It will be cheaper for sure, and then you could have wonderful experience with your roommates. So sharing is also like, I was afraid in the beginning like to share an apartment, and then it's like it can be a really great opportunity to get to know more people, especially in the beginning when you are, because being international, it can be rough at times, especially in the beginning, getting adjusted to the new place, because it's not like home, right? In your home, in your country, you know how the system works, almost, I mean, right? But being abroad, right? In the beginning, there are so many questions that need to be answered. So don't be afraid. I would reiterate, like, don't be afraid to ask for help. People usually are going to be friendly, and definitely reach out to the international office in your university. And yeah, and hope for the best, because in the end, everything works out and you're going to have a wonderful experience.
I would say one challenge that I think that I can't speak to everyone's experience because all the Fulbright grants are different, but I think that a lot of people doing Fulbright research grants from the US to another country and English teaching assistant grants from the US to another country, those programs don't necessarily have like a concrete job description. So when you're in the US, you probably have like a list of 10 tasks and you have a supervisor, and that person has a supervisor, and maybe you have like report feedback on how you're doing. And I don't think that necessarily the Fulbright program is structured that way. So maybe someone that you know in the same country or a different country has a very different job than you do, or maybe you're not totally sure what your role should be. And I think I kind of mentioned this before, but don't let challenges take up a day or a week or a month of your experience. Because like Everton said, you look back now and you're like, you know what? It's just snow. Like they seem so minor in hindsight, which is always 2020. But my best advice that I had to learn, not immediately, but through trial and error, is really present yourself to everyone and get to know everyone. So maybe if when you arrive, someone says, well, our last, grantees hosted a film club and did this, you could just kind of say, okay, I would really like to do that if that's going to be a goal and we want some continuity. But just so you know, I'm really interested in literature and I studied literature and I think I have a lot to contribute. Is there someone I could collaborate with? So I think I just had to learn to make myself available, but also kind of speak up for things that I thought would be good. And then you'll see that in a really organic way, a good role is kind of coalesces for you, where you feel like you're adding meaning, but also carrying on what's important. So my best advice would just be to like make yourself super helpful and always present yourself. If people don't meet you until the last week of your grant, it's hard to really collaborate with you.
Okay, thank you. And Courtney, do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, hi there. Thank you so much for all of your input and experience. I have a question about So I'm applying to a Fulbright scholarship that would be for dissertation writing, graduate PhD level dissertation. When I'm at the dissertation level or that phase, which would not be for another year. Hopefully I'll finish my coursework by June of next year. And I happily, gratefully, I've been able to contact someone in Japan who wants to support me in my dissertation work as a Fulbright. And he's with a university, a professor with a university. But I need, I mean, he understands some English, but I need also materials in Japanese about the being an affiliate, you know, and what that entails. And I'm just wondering, I've looked into the Fulbright office. There's a US Japan Fulbright office. Their phone number's been disconnected because of COVID. I think that they just shut down the office, or they're consolidated or something. I have no idea, but I'm just wondering, like, getting the affiliate knowledgeable about how this works, because Japan has a pretty strong Fulbright program, obviously, like of 12 or 13 recipients, from what I understand, based on the website. Yeah, so I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. Am I going in the right direction of finding this? Oh, and also was the other question about recommenders. You were saying I've been just focusing on this affiliate and contacting him and getting his thumbs up, but in regards to recommenders, do I need more than an affiliate? Do I need, how many recommenders do I need?
The affiliate is the person in the host country, so you need a letter from them, but you also need letters of recommendation from individuals here in your country. And so I think it's 2, it might be 3, I don't remember.
Okay.
But usually you would select, is it 3?
3?
Usually you want to use professors or people in your research that you're working with.
Okay. All right. And what's the other thing? I think that's it. Yeah. I mean, I'm working on, I can work on the recommendations too. But the internal deadline was September 3rd, correct?
September 7th for Claremont.
7th? Okay. Okay.
And I've had a couple of friends who went through a process similar to yours, leaving from the US and needed affiliates. Right. So I won't be an expert, but I can tell you what I know. First, I know that the affiliate, you're right, is very, very important. I believe they're part of the process for your visa letter at the end, if I'm not mistaken, but also the way that they went about finding those affiliates is they tried to contact any professors that you know that either did a Fulbright or did know someone that did a Fulbright research grant, even if it's not to the same country. Sometimes they can go on online forums. There's actually like a Fulbright group online. I don't know if I'm calling it the right thing, but the Fulbright forum, after you have an ID and a Fulbright email, you can join. And I also know that sometimes people would find an affiliate. That person would be their affiliate at the university. And then when they actually got there, they would say, you know, your research is, you know, more in line with this person who works here, but I'm happy, you know, to be this person for you on paper. So I think maybe just finding who that person is, getting a letter, but also making sure that they understand what it means to be an affiliate. So whether that's communicated to them by another professor who's at your university who's done the program, or they can find a friend who's done the program and can kind of explain, so that way they know what they're signing up for and know that emails are going to be coming to them that they need to respond and probably sign something is definitely the first step. Can I ask what you're doing your dissertation on or in, like which subject?
It's in arts, the arts. It's related to site-specific art and architecture, the phenomenon in Japan from a cultural studies perspective.
Maybe the people on the call, the people that I know who did it were in literature and anthropology, but if anyone else knows anyone, perhaps we could get at least enough people together that they would help point you in the right direction, or at least have a copy of a letter that they used for their affiliate that could be sent to your contact in Japan. Maybe that would be helpful.
That would be great. Like an anthropology. If you have a friend in anthropology or something.
Sure.
I looked up the past Fulbrights in Japan, who was art history, who was anthropology and such. Yeah, but I know a professor in art. I have a master's in art history, a professor who was a Fulbright. Like in the 70s, 80s, I could contact her, right?
That's okay. They probably, like, it's a small world where things keep circulating. If they know, if maybe another student has graduated since you did that program that did a Fulbright, they can get in touch with them and get a copy of what that letter looks like. So it explains to someone what it means to be an affiliate. Right. I think, yeah, the more doors you knock on, the more the right chances the right person will answer.
Right. Okay. Yeah. If you have any amongst your colleagues have an example, and would you mind sending it or through Rebecca?
Sure.
Okay. And then I can also, I actually found a PDF. It's like a contract for the Fulbrights from 2020 in Japan. I don't know, what happened based on COVID for them, but it explained what you're talking about, like even an affiliate who helps with just even a portion of the research is okay. That it's not, they don't have to be 100% devoted to what you're doing. But yeah, put something along those lines on, anyway. Yeah, anything you have, I would greatly appreciate. And then I can look into it on my end too.
And we can work together on an individual session. If you want to sign up for another one, we can try to work together.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a session this week.
Yeah, I need to send you your Zoom link. So.
End of this week? Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, I Googled a little bit and saw some samples of letters. I just wondered, I would think that I don't know of Japanese professors off the top of my head. I know a lot of Japanese professors, but I don't know of those who may have done a Fulbright. Yeah.
I'll help you navigate that this week. We can look through it and see if Luis can send us a letter too.
Yeah, I want to get back to him just because he would be a really great resource. This particular professor, I think, would be a great resource for a majority of my research. They're all connected, it's like a club.
Fulbright's like a club too.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks.
Courtney, do you have any questions?
I don't. I just wanted to say thanks to everybody for sharing their experiences and a lot of these really helpful, tips on how to apply and what to look out for and everything. It's very helpful to hear, especially learning that there is what sounds like a fairly vibrant online community through social media to look up and as I get more settled into what I would even want to apply for. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, we all end up, once you do a Fulbright, you know a lot of Fulbright scholars, and then you connect with other Fulbright scholars and becomes this giant web of friends. So yeah, if you ever have questions, you can reach out to me, and then I can reach out to someone else and see if we can answer them.
I think one thing that I'll plug that's somewhat new about the online community is there are now these things called Citizen Diplomacy Action Fund grants. Fulbright makes a lot of attempts to foster alumni community and networking. So they do different things. They have chapters. There's like a Fulbright chapter of Chicago, a Fulbright chapter of Georgia, but they all have their online presence and you can kind of reach out. So I think that that's really great. You never know when, you'll be working someplace and you'll want to bring in, last year I brought in a scholar of sculptural art from the Savannah College of Art and Design, and I found her on a Fulbright group. And it's just little things like that are really interesting and will help you at different points in your career. And another thing, I'll go back to the Citizen Diplomacy Action Fund grants, is they offer different means of funding exclusively for people who have done Fulbrights. And that can be for US people who go abroad, but also people who were abroad and then go back to their country. And they really encourage you to make multinational teams. So I think that there's different ways that you can kind of keep your experience going and also grow the Fulbright web. So I would just say for everyone on today, step 1 is getting a Fulbright, and step 2 is going through and doing all of those really neat things to foster international goodwill.
I'm actually applying for one of those this year. We'll see. Yeah, there's lots of opportunities after Fulbright as well. So does anyone have a, yeah.
Maybe just an additional piece of advice. So for everybody who's on here and wants to apply, if you have LinkedIn, I personally love LinkedIn. You can try to research, US Fulbrighters who went, let's say, to Japan or to other countries, and try to connect with them and talk with them about it. So I'm personally interested in another scholarship program, after my Fulbright. And I went on LinkedIn and discovered that one of my connections there is actually currently on that program. So I just messaged her, even though I don't really know her at all, to be honest. I messaged her and I told her, hey, I was on your profile. I saw that a lot of our experiences are kind of similar. I'm also interested in applying to the program that you're currently on. Would it be possible to meet with you over Zoom for 15 to 30 minutes? And so, I just let it sit there. And it took about a couple of days for her to get back to me, but she was like, yeah, sure. And, we scheduled the time and we talked together. On the flip side, I also get a lot of LinkedIn messages from people back home in Lebanon who want to apply to Fulbright. And they have a lot of questions because, on the website, you kind of get the basic general information that you'd need to apply, but you don't really learn a lot about technicalities related to, housing and transportation and all of these small things that we know are important once you get the grant, but they also maybe cause you some anxiety or some curiosity before you even apply. So they were just reached out, and I don't recall any time that I've never not answered anybody. And this just goes to say that if, I'm willing, to answer others, and this girl is willing, to answer my questions, then most people actually on LinkedIn are willing to, answer other people's questions. So if you have LinkedIn, also try that. It's also beneficial. I just wanted to plug that in because I know that we talked a lot, about Facebook, but it's just to say that it's not just restricted to Facebook.
Oh, very true. Yeah, I use LinkedIn to connect with lots of Fulbright scholars. It's a great resource. Okay, you guys. Well, we don't have to go the full 2 hours. I just had it for 2 hours in case we went over. Are there any last minute questions or comments or anything anyone wants to share? No.
Maybe one last thing that I will say. a lot of people ask me, like when they're asking about Fulbright, like what are the grades that I should have, you know, to apply, etc. And honestly, there's no definitive answer about it. I mean, obviously, with all prestigious scholarships, etc., the higher the better. Like that's always the rule. Even like when you're applying to internships or anything, I mean, that kind of goes without saying. But I mean, if you don't have, you know, a 4.0 or a 3.9, like don't be discouraged of applying, because Fulbright does not just look at grades. It's really about personality. It's really about your leadership potential. It's really about your contribution, you know, to the world, your past contributions, your future contributions, who you are as a person. So that has a big value in it. And that's why actually there is an interview component to Fulbright, because otherwise, I mean, if it were just about grades, they could just rely on the papers, but they actually want to get to know you, and they want to know that whoever they're sending abroad is somebody who will really reap the benefits of this program and who will engage in that cultural exchange and who will enrich, you know, the classroom, but also things outside of the classroom. So it's really a package. It's not just grades.
Very true. Nice job, Crystal. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else have any comments or questions? No? Well, thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. This is recorded, and so it'll be saved and shared. There's about 20 students or so that are interested, so not everyone can make it today, but I'm sure most of them will watch this video. And I'll have them reach out to you guys if that's okay, if they have any other questions for you. Awesome. Well, you guys have a good day. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all.
If you ever need someone from Brazil, I am available to help anyone who needs. Okay. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you too.
Nice to meet you all. Thank you for having us.
Bye, you guys.